Morning, Mario. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning. Good morning, Ashley. Good morning, Peyton. And Zion. Let's go ahead and get our cameras turned on, please. We're waiting on a few more people. We'll give them until 2 after, and then we got to get going. We got to get started. We got a few things to talk about. We're going to talk about the quiz. We're going to talk about makeups. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. This down. Start sharing my screen with you guys so you guys can start the do now, okay? So share, make sure I have computer sound on. All right, so for 2 minutes in your journals without looking, try to write down the elements of plot that you can remember, right? So starting with stasis. After that, open your notes and add the elements that you weren't able to remember on your own, but try to figure out what they were from memory first, okay? So I'm going to start 2 minutes now. So those of you who are just joining us, let's get our cameras on, please, and begin your do now. I know Easton can't have his camera on while he's writing. Everybody else, let's go ahead. So you got just 10 seconds left. And remember, you can always finish these later. All right, how'd you do? Were most of you able to remember most of them on your own? So we had what? Somebody give me the first one. Either come off mute or put it in the chat. Number one is what? What do we start with? At the beginning of the play, we're in where? The stasis. Yes, good, Vincent. Excellent. And then what happens to break the stasis?
Climax?
Nope.
Oh, wait, no.
Nope. What happens to break the stasis?
Is it the initiating event?
Yes, exactly. Good job. The initiating event breaks the stasis. And then we have what? Yes, Mario.
Rising action.
Good. Yes. So the protagonist is pursuing their goal in the rising action. And then about halfway through the play, we get to what?
The crisis?
Yes, several of you said crisis, right? Remember, it's crisis. And then the highest point of emotional intensity is the major climax. Okay. So a couple of you said climax to me, but it's crisis is halfway, then major climax. And then we have what after the major climax? Yes, Mario.
Falling action.
Okay, right. Yes, good job, Navi. As everything's sort of getting tied up. And then finally we end with what?
The resolution.
Or the new stasis, says Zion. Yes, okay. All right, okay. So with the quiz, I know that a few of you were confused, and I also know that a few of you were Googling the answer. And the way that I know this is because of some of the language that some of you used, okay? So for instance, there were a few people in the quiz who used the word denouement. Who knows what denouement means? Or how to spell it off the top of your head?
Isn't that like the final part of a play?
Yes, it is. It is the final part of the play, but we are calling it the falling action. Okay. So I don't use denouement. So for a lot of people who put in denouement, that indicates to me that either you're like Easton and your mother teaches theater, or you probably Googled it. Okay. So let's talk about the quiz. There were a lot of you who didn't do the quiz, and there were a lot of you that didn't do well on the quiz, okay? So if we review our instructional norms, all right, you are able to retake the summative if you got less than a 70%, okay? Because that's our policy. So you can retake it, and the retake is posted. If you did not do it initially, you can take it for a grade no higher than 70%, which is better than a 0, that's for sure, okay? What I would suggest is that you take a little time. So you've got, I posted it today. It's in Schoology. Let me show you where it's at. You go under class content. You go under, I think I put it where the original was. Yeah. Makeup, plot, and vocabulary quiz due October 2nd at midnight. Take a little time. Go thoroughly through your notes. If you still have questions, come to my office hour, okay, right? If you go into our materials, right here, there's a folder for office hour small group tutoring. Click on that. You can fill out for office hour or tutoring sign up, and then use this link to get to my virtual office. Okay, so if you got a grade less than 70% and you want to retake it, the option is available to you. Okay, if you got a grade higher than 70%, you don't have to do anything. Okay. What you'll see in the makeup is that you'll just be excused from it. Okay. So you don't have to do anything, but if you want to retake it, sorry, just a second, my cat's screaming. If you want to retake it, then you have until the beginning week of October. I would suggest not waiting too long, but going through your notes, reviewing it for yourself, waiting until you feel confident, coming to tutoring with me if you need help, or you can even come to my office hour if you want to be in my office hour while you take the quiz, right? So you can ask questions, all right? Make sense? Give me a thumbs up if this makes sense. All right, okay. Okay, so that's what we need to get going on. And like I said, if you got a good score, if you got close to 70%, you don't want to retake it, that's totally fine. You don't have to. It's just available for you if you want to. Okay. So, did I close the, oh my gosh. I closed the presentation. All right, so guess what? We get to go to ancient Greece today. Woo. And we are going to talk about some of the sort of VIPs of ancient Greek theater, okay? So how's everybody doing? Everybody doing okay today on this Monday? Yeah? Everybody doing all right? Most people are? Okay. Maybe feeling better now that you know that you get to retake that quiz. Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about ancient Greek theater, how it evolved. We're going to talk about 3 VIP playwrights named Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. And you've already sort of met them if you did the homework and watched Crash Course Theater number 1. We're going to watch Crash Course Theater number 2. And then we have a creative project that will be due by midnight tonight where you're going to get to create a character mask. All right. So how did ancient Greek theater start? Well, it originated with the Dithyramb, which was an epic poem that was first created impromptu. So what does impromptu mean? Or improvised?
Without being planned.
Yeah, exactly. So they would improvise it, right? It wasn't planned, it wasn't written out, okay, initially. They just sort of played around with the words, right? Later, it was written down. So the ones that we have are later versions of the dithyramb. They were in praise of the god Dionysus, who was the Greek god of wine and revelry, and later he'll become the Greek god of theater. So the dithyramb was performed by a group of 50 men who would become the chorus, right? So then what happens? Well, supposedly, a man steps out of the chorus and became a character. And this man was named Thespis, which is partially why actors are also called thespians. Okay, and I'm going to type that in the chat for you. So what does this mean? What is the difference between third and first person? Somebody tell me. What's third person? A third person point of view is what?
When they're talking about themselves, like using like him or
Okay. So yes, like a narrator. So think about it like he did, she did, they do, right? Like when you're conjugating, right? We're talking about like third person. Okay. Whereas first person is written in what perspective? Yes, I did, I do, I am, right? So we go from, King Oedipus stepped onto the palace steps to I am King Oedipus, and you walk onto the palace steps, right? Like, okay, so you're embodying the character instead of just talking about the character. Okay? Right? Makes sense? So when Thespis becomes the character, it moves us from third person perspective to first person perspective. He's speaking in character. So then what happens? Well, this becomes a feature of the grape harvest, right? Because we're honoring the god Dionysus, and he's the god of wine, and they're turning grapes into wine. So they're doing theater to honor Dionysus. It becomes so popular that eventually the Athenian government takes over the festival and names it the City Dionysia. Okay, so the City Dionysia was the name for the festival itself, right? So for 1 week, Athens becomes the City Dionysia. And it becomes a competition for playwrights, right? So that playwrights can enter to win the City Dionysia. Is this, you guys remembering this from the video from Crash Course Theater 1? Yes? Are we taking notes? We should be taking notes. Okay. All right. So the subject of the plays themselves are often based around mythology and religion. So what's the difference? Mythology plays are often written about the history and mythology of ancient Greece. Ancient Greek gods are often featured, sometimes embodied as a character. So sometimes we actually see the gods and goddesses on stage, and sometimes there's just references to the characters. So somebody tell me, what is the difference between mythology and religion? What's the difference?
Religion is something that people believe in.
Okay.
And mythology is history.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, basically, mythology doesn't have to be religiously based, right? It can be historical. It can have like supernatural elements to it. Whereas religion is like a principled act of believing, right? You don't necessarily have to believe in mythology. It can be like an interesting story, right? If it's not historical. Whereas religion implies belief. Yes? Are we doing all right? We're getting a lot of silence and I'm getting a lot of like people looking tired. So I'm worried that we doing okay? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so then tragedy becomes the most important form of drama in ancient Greece. As I said in the video, 900 tragedies were produced during the 5th century in Athens. And of those 900, we only have 31 in their entirety. We have little bits and pieces and scraps of other plays, but we only have 31 whole plays from this period. And all of the ones that we have come from 3 playwrights, and they are Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides. So, what happened to the other plays? What do you think happened? Let's go with Bennett. Tell me, what do you think happened? You can come off mute or you can type in the chat. Go ahead.
They probably got destroyed.
They got destroyed. Okay, so by whom? Does anybody know? Yeah, go ahead, Mario. Who destroyed them?
Or during the war or wars.
Wars with whom?
Who was I forgot who the war was with, but they were destroyed during the war.
Okay, all right. Does anybody remember who they were frequently at war with? Yes, Navi texted to me. Rome. Okay, so Rome had this tradition of basically, you know, if you look at the journey of the Roman Empire, they kind of like went down through Europe and then they go over right through Africa into Asia, all the way over to Egypt, right? They basically, what Rome would do is they would take an original something that they liked, a sculpture, a play, and they would recreate it, attribute it to a Roman artist, and then destroy the original. So then the copy now is like the oldest version that anybody can find, so that everybody would think that Rome invented this stuff, right? So they were pretty clever when it comes to that. What else happened to some of the plays? Let's see. Let's hear from Vincent. What else happened to some of the plays? You there? I don't know if he's there or not. Might have stepped out.
They might have just been lost.
Okay, so they might have just been lost, right? They weren't very good. Maybe they weren't keeping. What else does he tell us in Crash Course Theater happened to some of the plays? Cash, you tell me. What else happened to them? What were they written on? The plays died of old age? We're talking about the texts. Scrolls. Okay, Navi's helping you out saying the paper wasn't good. What kind of paper was it? It wasn't paper like we have today. What was it made out of? Or what was it called? Go ahead, Mario. Tell us.
Sandpaper.
What?
Sandpaper.
It's papyrus.
Er,
Yeah.
oh,
Papyrus. It's made out of reeds, right? The Egyptians sort of came up with it, and Rome kind of brought it back to Europe. Okay. So it was also, so they were destroyed by Romans or anybody else. The papyrus disintegrated. Maybe they weren't very good plays, so nobody really cared, right? But that's how we ended up losing almost all of them. Okay. All right. So let's first talk about Aeschylus. And so this is a stone or a marble carving of what maybe Aeschylus looked like, right? Who knows? So when Aeschylus was writing, it was at the very beginning of drama, where we still had a chorus of 50 men. And when he started, there was only one actor, and he changed that. He added a second actor. Now, this is incredibly important because it allows for dramatic exchange, which means for the first time, we would have two characters speaking to each other in character, right? So actors in character having a conversation in character. It's the first time this happens. So 50 chorus members, 2 actors, and we get to have real dialogue between characters for the first time. Now remember, the actors at this time were wearing masks, right? So anytime they want to change characters, all they have to do is put on a different mask. So we can have multiple characters portrayed by 2 actors, and they can talk to each other. So this is huge as far as drama is concerned. We have real dialogue happening for the first time on stage. All right, so next we have Sophocles, good old Sophocles. So Sophocles has a chorus of 15 men, all right? So sometime between when Aeschylus was writing and when Sophocles starts writing, the chorus had dropped from 50 to 12. And Sophocles is going to bump it back up to 15. And that's pretty much what it ends up staying at. Okay. He's also going to add a third actor. So now we have 3 actors. So what this usually means is that you'll have one actor who plays only the protagonist, and the other 2 actors switch masks on and off to play different characters, is usually what that ended up resulting in. Okay. And you will see that, or sort of see that. I'll show you a clip of Oedipus Rex, and we're going to listen to the story of Oedipus Rex. But yeah, so in Oedipus Rex, Oedipus the king, one actor would play. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. One actor would play Oedipus, and the other 2 actors would play all the other main characters. The other thing that Sophocles really contributes to drama is his emphasis on plot. And that's actually why Aristotle, when he writes the Poetics, loves Sophocles so much, is that he focuses on the construction of the actual play. He tries to eliminate plot holes. He wants it to be very clean, where A leads to B, leads to C, and so on. Okay. Now, as a result, today, this is a little sort of formulaic, right? It becomes a little bit where you can sort of anticipate where the play is going to go, but this was brand new to the Athenians, right? This was shocking. Very exciting for them. So let me go back one slide, right? Aeschylus, 50 chorus, 2 actors. Sophocles, 15 chorus, 3 actors, and dramatic construction, right? And then finally, we get to Euripides. Euripides is a totally different animal. He's still going to use the same number of chorus members and actors that, sorry, I have hair in my face, that Sophocles did. But a lot about his stories are going to be really significant and important. The first thing is that he's a little bit of a rebel. He doesn't really care about all the rules that have been set in place for him. He's going to start mixing things up. He's going to mix tragedy with comedy. He's going to mix in some melodrama, right? He's also going to actually express skepticism of the power of the gods, and if it was right that fate could never be rewritten, because a lot of the other plays just sort of accept the tragic fate that's assigned to their characters. And Euripides' characters are going to actively fight against it and question why this should be happening to them. He's also going to write female characters very sympathetically. And in fact, sometimes his female characters actually outwit and outplay the male characters. And that was pretty significant. We'd only really seen that happen with goddesses, right? Who were like all powerful beings. But now we have characters who, you know, they want something, they get it. They outwit their husbands. They do what they want. Okay. So Euripides, while he wasn't the most popular playwright at the time in Athens because he broke a lot of rules, his plays now are probably the most produced of the 3 because they translate the best to a modern audience. Questions about any of the 3 playwrights? Those are sort of our VIP players. Yes, Mario.
For Euripides, you know how you said that it would translate better to the modern audience?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be like more confusing though? I would think it would be more confusing because didn't you say that he mixed mostly all of them, but like different genres and all that into one? Wouldn't that be kind of?
Well, it reads more realistic, right? So like we're more accustomed to, even in plays that are really dramatic, there might be moments of humor or lines that are funny, right? Or we could have a tragedy that still does have like a little bit of like maybe a romantic feel. And that's kind of what he wrote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about the 3 before we move on? So those are our VIP peeps from ancient Greek theater. And they're also the people we know the most about because we have their plays, right? Okay. Now we got to talk about Aristotle. So Aristotle obviously was a philosopher who wrote the Poetics, right? However, we have to remember that Aristotle lived hundreds of years after the other Greek playwrights that we just talked about were dead, right? So he's really sort of like looking back at what he considered to be like the best time of Greek tragedy and explaining why it was the best. Kind of like we could, us now looking back and being like, well, this is why Shakespeare was the greatest playwright, yada, 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 right? So he was more of a historian. He wasn't their contemporary. So Aristotle writes the Poetics, And he's basically going to say, here's the greatest period of Greek tragedy, and here's what Greek tragedy has to have, or here's what tragedy in general has to have in order for it to be great, right? That's basically what the Poetics say. Any questions about Aristotle before we look at the Poetics? Okay. You got to tell me if I'm going too fast because I can't tell. I can't read your body language over Zoom, okay? Yes, Mario.
Wait, so he wasn't, or was he or was he not considered, like you said, like a VIP of?
Yeah, he is, but he's not a playwright.
Oh, okay.
He's a critic and a philosopher, okay? So
Okay.
he writes the Poetics. This is the name of the book. You know what? I think I packed my copy of it like an idiot. Let me see. Wait, just a second. Did I pack my only copy of the Poetics yesterday? And it's funny because I held it in my hand and I thought maybe I shouldn't pack this. And then I did anyway, I think. Yeah, I don't see it. But he actually wrote, that's the name of the thing that he wrote. Okay, so these are the elements of tragedy that Aristotle puts down for us in order from most to least important. So at the top is plot. Aristotle says that's the most important thing. Plot is the most important thing in order to have a great tragedy. And plot, his definition of plot, are the sequence of events. So what is that? What are we talking about by sequence of events? What are the sequence of events in a play?
The main points are the highest points.
Okay, and what are the main points of a play that we've been talking about?
It was a major.
Like the stasis, the initiating event,
Oh.
right? That's what is the plot, right? The sequence of events, the story, what gets us from beginning to end, okay? So that's the most important thing. Next on our list of importance is character. Now, character are the people who live in the world of the play, not the actors. Okay, so make sure to note this. We're not talking about the people who portray the character. We're discussing the characters themselves. Who are these people, right? Why are they important? So Aristotle says if you have a play that has strong characters and a mediocre plot, it could still be a good play. It just can't be great, right? Because plot's most important and then character. Our third thing is thought or theme, which is the question that the play should have you asking. It's what you should be thinking about, right? What does this play want me to think about? So we talked about the thought or theme of 21 Chump Street. We talked about a few things, and you said it could be don't change yourself for somebody else, right? Don't get involved with drugs. It could be about like the casualties of the war on drugs, right? Because he was like a good guy who had never really dealt with pot, and he does it this one time. Okay, consequences. Those are all things that you could argue for the theme of 21 Chump Street. But in general, it's the question that the play is asking. So next he has diction. Diction, he's talking about vocabulary. So do all the people in the play sound the same, or do they use different types of vocabulary? So think about with Naomi, how she talked with Justin, or when they were texting, versus when she's talking to the narrator and she's the police officer, right? It's a little different, okay? Because on one, she's pretending to be a high schooler, and then sometimes she's speaking as her real self. But also, like, does a king and like a child use the same vocabulary? And if so, why? Does a servant and somebody from the upper class use the same vocabulary? And if so, why? Okay, that's basically what he's talking about there. Word choice. Then we have music, which is instrumental music, but he was also talking about, because we have a chorus in ancient Greek theater, actually the arrangement of voices like a choir, right? That's probably the easiest one. And then we have spectacle, which is special effects. Now, Aristotle's definition of special effects was a little different. You know, he was also including costumes. He was also including like any lighting or set, right? Any of that stuff that it's nice to have, it's cool if you have it, but it shouldn't be the end of the world if you don't have it. Okay? Questions about this before we move on? No? All right. So we're going to watch Crash Course Theater number 2. And I want you to know anything that you want to discuss further or maybe use as research in the future for your projects. Okay? All right.
Hey there, I'm Mike Rignetta. This is Crash Course Theater, and today we're traveling to ancient Greece to uncover the origins of Western drama. Right, Dionysus? He's still hungover. My dude, this is your episode. You gotta get up. If we believe the ritualism theory from last episode, then eons of religious or quasi-religious rituals eventually birthed drama. But how? Well, it has to do a bunch with our grape-loving friend over here. By the 6th century BCE, Dionysus had become a very popular god in Greece, especially among the ladies. According to some maybe true, maybe not reports, women participated in a ritual where they'd run through the countryside, tear apart some animals, and then come home. It's fun, right? And if you want to know more about it, you can check out The Bacchae by Euripides. It is great. Whether or not that happened, we do have good evidence that in the 6th century BCE, some less wild rituals celebrating Dionysus spread through Greece. One of the most popular involved a procession from Eleutheria to Athens, where worshippers lofted a giant phallus and sang songs called dithyrambs in praise of you know who. And one theory about those dithyrambs actually is that eventually they evolved into theater, when singers started acting out the action instead of just singing it. Aristotle and his followers think that sooner or later a singer stepped out of the dithyramb chorus and started acting out individual characters. This actor was called Thespis. Like, actually, that was his name, and that's where we get the noun thespian. According to stories, Thespis learned to switch between characters, and to enhance the effect, he got the bright idea to use masks. This was Greek tragedy in its earliest form, one actor paired with a chorus. It still sounded a lot like a dithyramb or like a bard reciting portions of epics as banquet entertainment, but the direct impersonation of a song's characters made it different. And it continued to develop, adding actors and architectural elements for about 150 years. Tragedy, by the way, derives from the Greek words for goat and song, which may have had to do with animal sacrifices that were made during the festivals, or it may just be another reference to satyrs. Theater eventually gets institutionalized in Athens. Late in the 6th century BCE, pre-democracy Athens was ruled by a tyrant named Pisistratus. Pisistratus came to power through violence, but once he was in charge, he wanted to unite and strengthen the city. He decided that festivals, particularly those in praise of Dionysus, would be a good way to get everyone on board. Because wine? So in the 530s BCE, he expanded one of the gods' pre-existing spring festivals and turned Athens into City Dionysia with a theater competition at its center. Now, this festival wasn't only about theater, it was also about reaffirming Athens as a source of pride and power. It lasted 5 or 6 days and included a lot of events. Military and political leaders poured out libations. Tribute from cities of the Athenian Empire was displayed on stage. Names of men who greatly benefited Athens were read out. Children of soldiers who had died in war and had now reached maturity were brought on stage. There were also dithyramb contests. The theater competition took place in an outdoor amphitheater in front of a crowd of about 14,000 spectators. That likely included the whole range of Athenian society, even women and slaves. But, of course, only male citizens could perform in the chorus or vote for best play. The contest was between 3 different playwrights. Each had to submit a tetralogy, a 4-part work. The first 3 parts were linked tragedies, and the 4th part was a satyr play, which was lewd and usually involved a lot of prop penises. In 486 BCE, a comedy competition was added. Once competing playwrights were chosen, they were matched with a prominent Athenian citizen who would bankroll the production. Our big spender was called the choragus, and it was his job to assemble the chorus, hire the flute player, and buy the masks or any other set furniture like a bed or a throne. The playwright usually did the jobs that we now associate with director, composer, and set designer. Sometimes they even acted in their own work alongside other performers. There may have been up to 3 actors on stage, and then the chorus. Unfortunately, none of the music from these shows remains, but there are some painted vases that suggest what productions may have looked like. Fun fact, the chorus would sometimes dance. I wonder how hard it is to high kick in a toga. For a look at the theater structure itself, let's go to the thought bubble. The Theater of Dionysus was an outdoor amphitheater built into the Athenian hillside. You can still visit the ruins today. Its first incarnation might not have had seats, but eventually they were added, wood first and then stone. The seated section was known as the theatron, or seeing place. The chorus performed on a flat part called the orchestra, and in the center of the orchestra was the thymale, or altar. At some point, a dressing hut called a skene was also built, so that actors could change masks. With only 2 or 3 actors playing every role, you gotta change masks pretty often. There were several ways on and off stage, known as paradoi, including 2 side entrances so big choruses could march on and off when needed. There was also a place on top of the skene where an actor playing a god could appear and descend in a cart, which was called the God in the Machine, or the Deus Ex Machina. Maybe you're wondering, why might a playwright need a god to descend from the heavens? Well, sometimes you write your way into a situation and you can't write yourself out. So it's pretty helpful to have Zeus or Apollo come on down and make everything right. All of the actors wore masks made of linen with hair attached, so they probably looked pretty frightening, especially the one of Oedipus with blood all around the eyes. Tragic actors also wore robes and platform shoes called cothurni, so just imagine a lot of big, sweeping gestures and trying not to trip. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Ugh, that thing is no less terrifying from the inside either. So, during the dithyramb contest, after each playwright presented his tetralogy, a group of 10 randomly chosen citizens would select the winner, who was honored with an ivy wreath, sacrificial animals, and a big banquet. The Athenians took this contest very seriously, and if any funny business was suspected, there were lawsuits. Tragedy hit its golden age in 5th century Athens, first with the works of Aeschylus, then Sophocles and Euripides. Because papyrus disintegrates and invading hordes kept burning libraries, we don't have the plays that they wrote. Aeschylus wrote as many as 90 plays, but we have only 7. Sophocles wrote 120, but we have only 7. Of the 92 Euripides wrote, more than 7 at least this time. We have 19. Those 30-odd plays have had a huge impact, though. They're still very widely read. They matter to us now because they provide a template for most contemporary drama. But let's look for a second at how they mattered then. It's a huge deal to have 14,000 of your most prominent citizens hang out on a hillside watching plays when they could be doing their civic duty. But as it turns out, they were doing their civic duty. The leading citizens of Athens decided that it was important to get together and see plays that actively question the values and structures of the state. These plays are exploring what it means to be a part of a family and a nation, and what to do when divided loyalties creates conflict. They can teach you to be a better person and a better citizen by encouraging you to ask, through the dramatic action, what a good person is and what a good citizen does. Tragedy does something else too, at least according to Aristotle. He wrote the Poetics, one of the world's first works of literary criticism. And he had a theory about what made tragedy so important. And his theory was about catharsis, which literally means purgation. Aristotle writes that tragedy, through pity and fear, effects the proper purgation of these emotions. Now, a lot of scholars have spilled a lot of ink trying to explain what this means, so it's unlikely we are going to get to the bottom of it right here and now. But let me quickly offer one interpretation of catharsis. Let's try out the idea that tragedy, by exciting the emotions of pity and fear, becomes an outlet for those emotions. If we believe that pity and fear maybe aren't that helpful in a democracy, then we can argue that it's better to feel these things at a play, have an emotional catharsis, and then just get that stuff out of our systems and go back to being productive members of society. Like, imagine how productive all those people who've seen Les Mis hundreds of times must be, or people who've seen thousands of episodes of General Hospital, for that matter. Next time, we're going to look more closely at Aristotle's theories and use them to discuss Aeschylus's Orestia, the only complete tragic trilogy we have. And then, finally, on to the satyrs and their phalluses. Thanks for watching, and curtain. Crash Course Theater is produced in association with
I think you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. Anything that you thought was interesting?
Maybe the way you explained it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Their names. Okay. What about like the idea that it was their civic duty to go see the shows? Right? That was actually sort of their job, kind of like voting, right? Yeah, exactly, Vincent. Yeah. They said sitting around watching shows. So for 1 week, that was their actual job, was to go watch the shows and be ready if they were randomly chosen to vote. Yeah, okay. All right, good. So this is mostly going to be homework, okay? I want you to create a character mask. So I want you to pick a character, and it can be from a book, a cartoon, a TV show, a movie, a comic book, I don't really care, and create a mask for the character. So I'm going to give you in the, right there's a link to a mask. If you find a template you like better, that's fine with me, okay? So, but the idea is to create a mask that sort of shows audiences at a glance what this character is about. Okay? So if you wanted to pick, you know, Harry Potter, what would you put on the mask, right, for Harry Potter? That's the idea, okay? So if you want to print it out and draw on it and scan it, or print it out and draw on it and take a picture. Or if you want to just do it digitally, there's a place in Schoology for you to turn it in by midnight tonight so that when we get back, we can look at the masks that we created, okay? So just pick a character and create a mask that embodies that character. You don't have to do it literally. You can do it sort of in sort of a theatrical fashion. But that's your homework for today, is to create a character mask for a character of your choosing. Anybody have any questions about that? And you've got if you lose the link, it is also in the PowerPoint, or it should be. So bookmark it. Actually, just in case, I'll put it in Schoology right now in our day for today. So let me. Okay, so that's your homework. All right. So we'll be able to look at our masks next time. And then here's your exit ticket, which is also due today in Schoology. If you could interview one person from ancient Greece, who would you want to speak to? Why and what would you ask them? So that is due in Schoology also by today. So you've got your exit ticket and you've got your mask. Okay? Questions? You want to go ahead and do your exit ticket now? You are more than welcome to. Exit ticket, mask. And then remember, if you want to redo the quiz, you want help with it, you can sign up for tutoring, go through your notes, and retake it when you are ready. If you don't want to retake it, that is also fine. I'm cool with that. And if you're not sure, you want to talk to me about it, so you can sign up and come into my office hours for that too. So once you've finished your exit ticket, you are free to leave. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. Get 3 days together this week.
Thank you.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye. Okay, Zion, any questions? You're just working on your exit ticket. Okay. All right. I will see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye.